So I've heard that the used bike market is the hottest it's ever been. I would have to imagine that's probably the case. I mean, certainly the traditional bicycle market and electric bike market is very hot these days, and supply is a bit of a challenge, to put it lightly. We've made a video on that topic if you want to check it out. But more and more people are getting into biking and e-biking, and they're looking for options. It's not always so easy to find it in a shop. I have a e-bike shop, a couple of them actually, and I think a lot of people are turning to the used market. And I think a lot of people are also looking to potentially sell bikes on the used market. So this topic comes up a lot for me, and I figured it'd be cool just to make a video just talking about some of the resources, some of the ideas around that, and some of the important things to look out for and to consider when purchasing or looking to sell a used electric bike. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons why people might want to buy a used bike. Maybe they want to save some money. Maybe they might not anticipate keeping it for that long, and they just want to, have something to get them through for a little while, or they're not really sure whether or not this is going to actually work for them or that sort of thing. So they take the initial investment on buying something new. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense. And as far as people selling their bikes, there could be a variety of different reasons. Maybe they're just not using it. Maybe they're looking for a little bit of extra cash right now. I don't know. Whatever the reason is, hoping that I could provide some helpful resources as to how to work within this market, and maybe you can help to provide some other resources as well, because I certainly don't know everything. I have learned some things over the years, but one, where can you buy or sell a used bike, or electric bike more specifically? And there's a lot of different places. I think these days probably some of the more common places are like Facebook Marketplace is a pretty big one. There's actually a lot of Facebook groups that you can buy and sell things in, which that might be more helpful than just selling in specifically the general Facebook Marketplace in your area. Especially with electric bikes, they can be a bit more niche, and sometimes they can be a bit more expensive. So definitely good to try and get to like the person that might be most interested, that they're not just looking for any general bike or electric bike out there. On top of that, OfferUp is another site, or actually it's an app. Previously there was OfferUp and LetGo, and they actually merged together. So that's one app. But there's some other things that are more specifically oriented around bikes. Sometimes there's certain forums. Historically participate a lot in a forum called Electric Bike Review, and they actually have a specific classified section that you can sell or buy an electric bike. I guess outside of that, there's other things. eBay is probably historically one of the more popular places, and certainly something that you could get a pretty big audience for people there. Craigslist is another platform that's been pretty popular over the years. These days, I don't know, with the anonymity, and you might find some strange people looking for some strange things on Craigslist, but, no judgment. I mean, some people made their whole business on Craigslist, and I totally respect that. I think that's mostly it on the platforms. I mean, I'm sure you could find other ways, like put some signs up in your neighborhood or bulletin boards or this and that. I think it depends on where you live and, what your community is like. And, you could kind of see what other ads that are out there and what people are doing. That might give you some indication of whether this might be a good idea. But it certainly can't hurt trying. Just be cautious and be careful. And perhaps if you do go to meet with somebody, maybe bring a friend. Maybe a real big friend. Might not be a bad idea. One other point in relation to the used bike market, there can be a lot of stolen bikes being sold on the used bike market, and you really want to be careful about that because you don't really want to be promoting or supporting that sort of ecosystem. I think one thing that could be helpful is to ask if the seller has original proof of purchase. If they have some information, perhaps you could even potentially reach out to the shop that they purchased from. I know that that's something that's happened to us before. Certainly be cautious if you see something selling in a price range that's not kind of in line with the normal price range. There could be certain special circumstances where people sell things very cheap, but there's definitely plenty of scenarios. If you think about how popular bike theft can be, there can be a lot of bikes being sold that are stolen. There's other resources you can use to look up the serial number. Like there's one, it's called Garage 529. Another one is called Bike Index, and you can also check the serial number on there. You can also register with these things, which is probably a good idea if you purchase an electric bike or really a bike in general. Register it. That way, if it is stolen, it can show up on these registries, and that could be very helpful. You should also note that if you ever have a bike stolen, they'll generally ask for the serial number. This is a really important detail to actually reunite you with the bike if it is ever to be found. But I don't know if that necessarily works as well, because at the moment, as I said, it still is kind of a niche or niche. Yeah, I know. Always get me on that one, because in Europe they say niche and here we say niche, or people say it both ways, but don't hate me. say it how I say it. I don't know if those methods are necessarily the best way to go. Maybe it depends on the community that you live in, because at times you could be one of few people that are into e-bikes, or maybe you're in an area that there's a lot of people that are into electric bikes, and maybe it might be a little bit easier to sell them. But I think finding some of these platforms you could have a bigger audience for them is definitely helpful. There's other things like the Bicycle Blue Book, where actually some shops will take the bikes as a trade-in. This could give you the added benefit that you don't have to potentially deal with a stranger or deal with all these strange things. I mean, I know I've sold things on the web before, and sometimes you get contacted like, oh, can I give you a credit card and my shipping company is going to pick it up? That's a scam. Don't do that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these weird things, or just some strange person. I guess for me, I'm kind of used to like the type of people that you're talking to. Generally, they know what they're talking about and they've done some research, especially if they're purchasing something of significant value. If you end up talking to somebody, it seems like they don't understand anything you're talking about. There's a good chance that they might just be trying to scam you or something like that. So it's a little tricky. But yeah, a trade-in could potentially be helpful, but you might not get as much money as you could on the private market. Actually, a lot of times people come into our shop and say, hey, I'd like to purchase one of these bikes. Is it possible you take a trade-in? And for us, it's a little bit challenging. One, as I said, you might not get the same amount of money, so I kind of feel bad at times, like offering somebody this significantly less money. But on the other hand, I can understand why people might, value the benefits of just dealing with a shop and saying, okay, you don't have to worry about it, potentially lowering the price of this new purchase and not paying as much sales tax. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I mean, some other things I've seen other people do in the past is actually have a bike inspected by an independent mechanic before purchasing it. I know that people do this with cars, and that's something that could be valuable. Or at least you can even ask the seller to do that beforehand and say, hey, listen, I'd even be willing to pay you a little bit more for the bike, provided that you're able to provide some documentation that it was recently tuned up by a reputable shop. Some of the better e-bike systems out there can provide diagnostic reports, and this is a pretty big deal. We primarily work with Bosch, and they actually are able to provide this diagnostic report. We actually recently got a tool with them, which is a battery capacity tester, and it can actually test the remaining capacity of the battery. And that could really be helpful in ascertaining what the remaining life of that is. You could also see certain details like how hard the bike was ridden. Was it ridden in turbo mode all the time? Or did they ride it perhaps a little bit lighter, more in eco or whatever? I don't know that necessarily that's going to impact the overall lifespan of the bike, but it certainly could be something to consider when purchasing. So I think it's helpful when some of these companies are offering some of these additional details. I'd be interested to know if one day we see something like a Carfax of bicycles. It could be kind of cool. Overall, I think there's a lot of things to consider, or what's important to you, whether or not buying or selling your used e-bike is a good fit. Hope these ideas are helpful. I'm sure others might have some other ideas or feedback. I certainly welcome you to share them in the comments. If you have any questions, certainly leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to help. And I guess understanding and developing this idea a bit more will be helpful for the future of the e-bike industry. I mean, if you think about it, the automobile industry, which is a bit more mature, there's kind of a whole industry around this, right? You have used car dealers. I mean, in theory, will you in the future have used e-bike dealers? Maybe. That could be a thing. Certainly having this certified pre-owned thing, I think that's kind of interesting, could be really helpful, as I think a lot of people might like to, trade up every couple years. I'm not really sure internally how we're working that out or how we're actually dealing with that as a shop. We're still kind of figuring that out. Certainly welcome feedback. But I think that's about it. I'm really interested to know what your experiences are in the buying and selling of used e-bikes, as I think it's something that's going to grow more and more, and people really benefit from learning from other people's experience. I know that I do. And overall, I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll see you soon.